I like that.
You believe to be the youngest black woman leading a multinational direct selling company in Africa. What did that journey from law to the C-suite look like?
Law is what I studied, but law can be very stiff. And I'm saying this as a lawyer. I still hold my law licenses. But, you know, when you cross over to the side to direct selling, it's sales. People are just excited. They want to party. They want to sell. There's the joy in the conversion. But my legal background really helps me a lot with what I do now because I'm able to do things, bring governance into our business.
Life remembered and shared on African Diaries with Teach Matez, 10 till 12 a.m. Central African Time on Channel Africa, live from Harare, Zimbabwe. The Upside on Channel Africa, nothing but the good stuff and the African perspective.
Let's get into our second conversation of the day at Channel Africa 1. It is The Upside with Poppy and Ntsako.
Let's talk all things branding. Looking expensive is no longer enough. How do you actually build a premium brand, right? This is for those who are trying to, This is for those who are trying to build, you know, whether it be a product, a service, or even your own personal brand. I feel like it's quite important. Joining us to speak a little bit about this is Nomaswazi Phumo, who's the head of strategy at Leagas Delaney South Africa. Nomaswazi, thank you so much for joining us on The Upside. I want us to take a trip down memory lane for a moment. Remember, I think it was 2023, where all like the premium brands, I think it was the Balenciagas, the LVs, and all of that, kind of went on a monochrome tip. Everyone just had black logos, black and beige. You know, what is happening on, you know, the branding front? You know, what is currently going on?
Good afternoon, Poppy and Ntsako, and thank you for having me. A lot is happening on the branding front, and I think the ever-evolving landscape, the changing consumer, has brands currently feeling like they're in a little bit of a pickle. And what we're experiencing in a lot of these spaces, I think, especially with the brands that you've kind of mentioned in more of the fashion space, is a sea of sameness. And I think a lot of it comes from just panic and not being clear on your distinction, on what your brand is about, what you stand for, and what your value is.
So how do you stand out if you are developing or making a brand or even a product? What are the key elements to defining distinction?
I think the first thing is you have to be really clear on your proposition and what you stand for. And I guess as well, I think the biggest thing that helps you drive that clear distinction in the luxury brand space or just in the brand space holistically is having a good sense of your audiences. So understanding that the audiences are ever evolving and finding that meaningful difference. You know, I think a lot of the times, especially in the South African market or even the African market, our you know, it's quite textured from an audience perspective, and having a good grasp of all the different audiences, I think puts you in a really good position to be quite distinct as a brand.
So, I mean, what do you look, or rather, what should you do? What should you focus on when building a brand? Is it the color? Is it the shape? Is it the font? Is it how big it is, how small it is, the images that we put there? Because I think the moment you think, okay, boom, I've got a business idea, you know, what this brand is going to look like. I feel like the brand identity is quite important, and I don't think we put enough effort into it.
I think everything you mentioned is important. I always say when you're building a good brand, everything matters. A lot of the time, people overinvest in one thing or one aspect of it. Everything matters. It's the logo, it's how it looks, it's what you stand for, it's what you put out, it's how you run your social media channels, it's the words you use, you know, language, visual identity. It all needs to come together, and every single element of it matters. But what I find is that there's usually an over-indexing on the things that might be on the outside, but it's also the functions internally as well. How you run that business is super important as well in order for you to be a very credible brand in the market.
So Nomaswazi, maybe give us an idea from your perspective of a brand that has done this, you know, branding exercise well, you know, over the years, and one that you are watching right now that's seeming to get things right. So give us maybe a little bit of a throwback, an older brand, and then something that we can relate to, you know, in this day and age that is just getting things right from a branding perspective.
I think I do mention in the piece Woolworths, and I think it's always a brilliant brand case study. And, what they've done is from the experience in store, which is a big element of that brand feeling or experience, they really get it. They get it right to the T, even in terms of just the temperature in store, the layout in store. From a product perspective, just how we're continuously getting new products. They have a good grip of the South African consumer, our needs. They have, if you're a young professional, Woolworths is the perfect place for you, but as well as if you're a growing family and there isn't time in the morning to pack lunch boxes, they kind of understand that product development really well. Quality as well is something that's super important and that they're known for. And they're quite distinct in the way in which they show up. So if you see something from Woolworths, that W is quite prominent, that font size, that black, it's very clear. It's in-store experience. It's how they, their photography and their treatment as well. So they're a brand that I think has really gotten it right. And then from another brand that is interesting, from a brand exercise perspective, they have a good grip of the ecosystem's discovery. Seeing how everything, that entire loop comes together. And, that's super important, especially in that category where, everything living in one space makes life so much easier, whether it's your fitness, it's your health, and whether it's your money, and all of them come together. Investec as well is quite distinct, one of the older brands, very strong in its lineage, clear to the consumer in which it talks to, and just the service that it offers, and really just setting a standard and being able to meet it year in and year out. And I think, Poppy asked which brand am I looking at right now, and I think is quite interesting. I maybe will reference a category instead of a brand, and I think the fashion category is really one to watch out. A lot of exciting things are happening. You have your Teba Makukus, there's it's just so considered. It's not just about making clothes. It's about the culture. It's about the history. And, when we talk about a good brand gives consumers that feeling, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's an entire experience. It's knowing that I am going to pay a little bit more for this coat, but it's something that's going to make me feel good, show up stronger and more confident, and something that's going to potentially last, from a lineage perspective. So definitely a category to watch. Amazing things happening, not only in South Africa, but in our continent as well when we're talking fashion and good brands.
And I was going to ask, which brands have navigated change very, very well, but instead, how do you navigate change as a brand? Like if you decide that this is a new, structure, management, or just feeling like the brand needs to take it into a new direction, what are some of the things that we need to pay attention to?
I think the most important thing is you need to be clear on what's your thing. A lot of brands tend to go with the waves, the latest thing, but you need to know what's your thing. And sometimes it's making calls that are unpopular in that particular season. There's this rise of the creator economy. And if you're a brand that feels that it doesn't align, then you don't use the influencer strategy because you're clear on what your thing is. And I think that for me is super important. And as well as being single-minded, I think it's so easy in the brand space to say a lot of things, but you have to be okay with saying the same thing over and over again for memory structure, but as well as that you start believing it internally as a brand, you start showing up as it, and as well as from a consumer perspective, we start knowing you for it and associating you with it, whether we see your name or not. We know that communication is from that brand, and because it's been saying the same thing over and over again, I trust that brand.
The voice and the insights of Nomaswazi Phumo, head of strategy at Leagas Delaney South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on The Upside. It is 4:30. Let's check in with sport right now. Zycon, what you got?
Sport.